Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy EGlaze on the EGlaze Chronicles, and I have for this Monday, July 27th. I'm already trying to make it August. I have a friend of mine. I call her Neff. She's the queen, Nefertiti. And when I went to this new format, I said I can't do this format without her, and she said, "Yeah, let's do it." Then I tell her late how to get on, so it's my fault. But please welcome a dear friend of mine, Nefertiti Jaquez. How are you, Nefertiti?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really excited about this new streaming thing we got going here. It makes me want to use it.
Yes. So you
Um,
will see her using this very soon. You know, I'm
yeah,
gonna
I
send her
definitely can
everything.
see myself. You're gonna have to give me like a tutorial on it, but I can
I'm
definitely.
sending you everything. You're gonna have everything on this because this would fit you perfectly,
But here's my
especially
deal: how many people can actually tune in at one time?
as many as possible. Whatever YouTube can take, whatever you can have thousands. I see thousands of people. The bigger people have thousands of people looking at them at one time. So you can have as
That's
many
it.
as you want. I mean,
I
you're
mean,
gonna have millions, though. I know you're gonna have, because you
we'll
Neff.
see. We'll see. I've been MIA from social media for a bit now.
I gotta ask that. I know you take your breaks, but when you go MIA on me,
Uh huh.
what way, you need a break from the world, or you just had to take care of something? I'm being nosy. Yeah, I'm all in your business. What's going on?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, I look, I think it's two parts. I think that there's a lot going on right now. I'm dealing with the family emergency, so there's always that.
Mhm.
And then I'm a typical Pisces. Like I am a giver. I like to give to a lot of people, but then there comes a point in time where I've given too much and I'm burnt on both ends. And I just need to kind of like step away for a little bit. And it's interesting to see what happens when I step away. When I step away, I get a lot of messages about like, where you at? You okay? Which is very sweet and very humbling. That people even notice like that I've been gone for like it could be like a week and people will notice. But yeah, no, sometimes I think it's good to take like a social media detox. It's good for the
What
soul.
do you mean? Well, let me ask this. I mean, in this pandemic era that we're in, usually you would disappear to a nice island. You take some great vacations, but
I
you
do.
can't do much now. I mean, I know you're taking care of family, but you can't go places this time. What does just getting away mean today in today's time for you? Is it just relaxing, shutting down everything, maybe reading a book, visiting family? What is that like in today's time?
I mean, it's funny that you say that because I was just having this conversation. It's really really difficult, and you do know this about me. Like every year during my birthday, I always go away for like 10 days by myself. I recalibrate, do the whole yoga thing. And this year it was canceled, clearly due to COVID. So I haven't been on a vacation, at least not in 2020, not a real one, like not one that like a weekend getaway prior to COVID. So that's been really difficult for me. You know that I love to travel, so not being able to travel is hard. Not being able to see my family because they all live out of state is hard. I think I, like everybody else, am having a very, very difficult time dealing with this new normal, what COVID is, like this idea of being quarantined and being home. I think that there are some people who can deal with it a little bit better because they're willing to also take more risks. Like I do have friends who at least have gone out to have brunch together and that kind of thing. I'm just not there yet. I mean, as you know, I'm autoimmune like suppressed, so I have to be very careful where I go, who I'm around. So I'm always in a mask and gloves. So I think it's just been more difficult just because I'm such a social butterfly by nature that this idea of being confined is very difficult for me.
And that's interesting because I hear a lot of people say that, and we're, you know, I'm not gonna lie to you. This I've had a hard time, and I know you've. Let's just say it. You've been at the news for a little while, the,
Hmm.
the, the news station, and I'm. This is why I used to love to see you because you would be in the news, you would be in it, doing
Hmm.
some things with your mics in people's faces. You will be in it right now.
Yeah.
It's all these times. I know you're still keeping up. I know you're keeping up with the times and doing things and broadcasting. But do you miss the action like these times that we're in right now? Because I used to always see you. I used to always say you was in the worst stories ever. You will always be where if there was
Yeah. You would always buzz me after, be like, "Are you okay?" After that story.
yes, like why are you
Yeah.
there?
So we call it, the acronym is like news FOMO, like if like the idea of like missing being in it. It's kind of hard because of course I miss being out in the field. Local news is an interesting kind of thing because for me, that's never really what I loved. What I loved was being out in the field with people and telling their stories. So I think for me in this climate that we're in right now, especially after, Ahmaud, George Floyd, Breonna, I think in that realm, as you know, I cover crime. I've definitely have missed the idea of like being in that realm. And I wonder to myself, like, if I was telling the story, how would I have told it, differently than anyone else? So yeah, you definitely miss that element of it because it's ingrained in you. It's what I've been doing for the last decade of my life. But when I left local news, I was very adamant about the idea of like directing and producing and doing other things that were more artistic. So it's like twofold. It's like part of me misses it, and the other part of me is like, um, not like been there, done that, but like I'm good with it. Like, you know what I mean? Like if a great opportunity presented itself, then I would never say never to a great opportunity. But at the same time, it has to be the right fit. I think for a very long time, um, I felt like I wasn't able to tell stories the way that I wanted to tell them or give them the justice that they needed.
Keith Meadows just chimed in and said what I said. We miss you. He said, "Hey,
I
Neff, we
love
miss
Keith
you."
Meadows.
Yeah.
The
He
chief.
just want to say we miss you, buddy. So he
I
wanted to put
broke
that out
that's
there.
another story. I broke that story when he became chief. I was very proud of I've always been very proud of him. I of course I know the history that he has had in law enforcement. I was not here when he was with APD, but when I became the APD reporter at that point, he had already been in College Park. But he has always had this amazing reputation that has always followed him. I think that Keith is this and it's weird to call him Keith like in public because I'm always so used to calling him Chief. Um,
Right, right,
but
right, right.
he just has this great way of being. I think that he's a great person. He is a great chief. I think that um, he does very well at leading his soldiers. The men and women that work underneath him, I'm sure, are very proud to have him as a leader. And Chief is one of those guys where, let me tell you, I remember I was here year 2, and he knew that I didn't have any family here. And just to give you an idea of what kind of human being he is, I remember him saying, like, I know that you're alone, and if you're working or if you happen to be working on Thanksgiving, just drive by the house, and the wifey and I will make sure that we have a plate for you ready, even if all you can do is pick it up and go on to your next story.
Wow.
That's the kind of guy that Keith is. So big props to him. He's an amazing guy.
I know you always giving people props, but you do mean a lot to a lot of people. And I'm gonna put it out there because,
Don't make me
like,
cry.
like Keith said, people have seen you and you've been in people's homes and you've done so much for so many people. What has it meant for you? Because telling a news story is one thing, but to mean something and do something for people is another. When people see you, I get it a lot. And I don't know what some of the reasoning behind, but have you seen Neff? Is she okay? I'll be like, yeah, she's fine. She's just doing Neff, being Neff. But for people to care about you and miss you and say things like that, what does that mean for you?
I mean, I get it a lot in my DMs and in my messages. I'm not on Facebook as much, so I feel bad when people leave me messages on Facebook because I'm never on there. So I'm like, I hope they don't think that I'm ignoring them because I'm not. It's really humbling. It's really humbling to have worked in, Philly, Miami, Houston, Atlanta, 4 major cities, and have community members within those cities really feel a connection to me. The same way that I have felt a connection to them. I think the one thing that people probably get from my reporting, and I think a lot of it's not to take away from anybody else. I think what they might get from me is they really feel how I feel, right?
Hmm.
Like when I was covering Bridget's case, when I was covering TT Dangerfield's case, which I worked with Keith Meadows with that case, people could get a sense that I really cared not only about these families, but these victims who, of course, because they have passed or they had been murdered, I had never even met a day in my life. And so I think it's that connection that people feel. And that's a true connection. Like, I really pride myself and really pray on a day-to-day basis that families feel that when we walk away from each other, that not only that justice was served, but that I was just there to help them. The example that I always give, and I gave this even in Tyran's case, is it's like in Revelations 13, where you have Michael, who's basically slaying all of the demons so nobody can get to baby Jesus. And I kind of feel like that's the role that I take is that I'm giving these families and these people the voice to really make sure that their stories are out there. So going back to your original question, when I see what's happening in the world today, yeah, there's a part of me that wishes that I could sit down with Ahmad's mom, and tell that story, because I feel like he's deserving of that. But, in other case and purposes too, I feel like the journalists and the reporters that have been covering the stories have done also these amazing jobs. So, I feel like you can only be exactly where God wants you to be.
And I hear you mentioning you bringing up Revelations and all that, but where does faith play a part in your life?
It's kind of funny that you say that. I think originally, when I was in local news, it's changed now, right? Because now we have more of a voice. Now people are forced to have to listen to us, especially if we are people of color, especially if we're Black in news. Back then, I didn't feel like I could actually talk so much about my faith and how much it played a role in the stories that I told. But there has never been one live shot where I haven't prayed right before I've gone live or right after I've been live. I think now being out of local news, and I shouldn't have been scared to have said it then. It was just, in local news, you're always taught you're not supposed to have an opinion, that, you have to be able to separate, your own feelings with the story. But it's very hard for me not to look at a Breonna Taylor story and not feel like that can be my sister or my cousin and not be praying for her and her family. Where I think back then in local news, I probably would have been more careful in what I said. Whereas now you can kind of see that I take a very strong position in how I feel about what's going on. And I feel very good about that.
You've seen what's going on. Let me just start from a city perspective. You've been in Atlanta, what? Ooh, how long you been here? 5? Have you made 5?
No. Just turned 4 years.
4 years.
Brittany's been here for 5.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But could you have ever seen the city erupt like it did this city from what you've seen over the past few months? What has happened in the city? Did you see this could possibly happen with some of the things that have been going around the country? Was Atlanta, because everybody say Atlanta's the city.
If I could have foresaw that, like, what was going to happen after George Floyd's murder. Yeah,
like
I could have. And the reason I say that is, and it has nothing to do with Atlanta. I could have seen it in Atlanta. I could have seen it in New York, Miami, LA. I could have literally seen it everywhere where it happened. I think when you take a situation, look, let's call it for what it is. We saw George Floyd being murdered right before our own eyes. If you saw that video and you see him asking and gasping for air, that was a murder on video. So the idea that there would be this outrage within the Black community shouldn't really have surprised anyone. And in fact, it shouldn't have just been an outrage in the Black community. It should have been outrage all together, right? Like, that is what it is. We saw a murder unfold. And it's, it's not my place to to down talk anybody when it comes to, how it was perceived. And when we talk about the violence, do I condone violence? No. Do I understand why protesters or certain protesters went to the extreme in which that they did? I do. And I think I can understand it is because I think when you're looking at these cases of, you think of Black people and you think of the PTSD and the oppression over hundreds of years and everything that they've gone through, it's almost like poking the bear. It's like, how much can somebody take until they just explode? And nobody can really dictate how somebody else is going to act under fear, pressure, grief, shame, anger. And as human beings, we operate from those kind of places, either love or fear. And so to have a younger generation go to that extreme, it wasn't surprising. Was it needed? Some people could argue yes, some people could argue no.
Your opinion is strong. Like you said, if you having dope soul talk and some of the things you've done on Instagram, some of the stories you put out there, what do you see we go from here? What do you see this takes us? What do we go as a culture going forward with what we've seen and what's been going on?
I think people like T.I. and Killer Mike and Charlamagne the God have been doing very great things as far as, and Sean King trying to, galvanize, the community in doing the right things, right? Let's sign these petitions. Let's try to get laws passed. I mean, the biggest thing that we've been talking about is, what are you going to do when it comes to voting, right? We know who's in place now. What will you do? And how are you going to be an active participant to ensure that this doesn't continue happening? So it's galvanizing, it's coming together, it's protesting, it's signing these petitions. Clearly, it's about voting. I think city leaders need to be, and I know that the mayors has formed that committee.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be talking about what the people in communities want. I think a lot of the times people have always fallen, like, their opinions and their lives and the lives of their children have fallen on deaf ears, right? We've become too accustomed to shots ringing out in the hood. And when I became a crime reporter, that was the main reason. And Keith Meadows will tell you that, because we've had these conversations. That's not okay for me. As a woman of color, it's not okay when an 8-year-old comes up to me and is like, "Oh, are you looking for the bad guy? He went that way and he was carrying a 38. And then here I go turning around telling Keith that this is what an 8-year-old told me." Like, that's not a conversation that we should be having. That's not even knowledge that a child should have. That shouldn't be the environment that our kids should be growing up in. But unfortunately, that's the case. When we think about how we move on next, when it comes to city politics, when it comes to big corporations, we need to have people who reflect us on higher level management. Brittany and I have been having a conversation about what would it look like if all of these big corporations basically put out on social media or online who made up their executive boards. Right. So if you have somebody like, and I'm not calling out Coke, but let's say Coca-Cola is based out of here. You have Coke. Give me your top level executives, and let's look at how many of those are people of color, how many of those are women, how many of those actually represent the consumer, the people that look like us. I think we need to make sure that we have people who look like us, who understand what we think and how we feel in positions of power.
How do you feel about our role in this realm, the media realm? You talked about a friend of ours, Brittany, and I thought, they did a great job covering things, but I feel like we still don't have control over our media. What are your thoughts on Black media in general? Let's just talk about it, and the way we cover things, the way we report things, and putting those stories out there. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, I go against the grain. So I'm the kind of person where if I don't feel like something's right, I'm deucing out. So everybody knows that about me. Read whatever you want to read. Anybody who knows me knows the absolute truth. Shout out to Brittany, not just because she's my best friend. I do believe that Brittany across the board did some of the best coverage when it came to the protests here in Atlanta. I'm not saying that just because she's my best friend. For those who don't know, her and I were actually competitors before we became friends. So this is a woman that I've gone toe to toe with when it comes to telling stories. So, and a shout out to her. I think she did a great job. I think her station did a great job. I think stations across Atlanta did an amazing job, as well as networks. When it comes to Black media, I think it's the same thing. You see that there are a lot of organizations who are hiring people of color at senior executive positions and that kind of stuff. And we need to see more of that. And we need to have people, whether it's in local news or national news, kind of banding together and having these conversations with their management. How can a manager who doesn't know anything about oppression, doesn't know what it's like to have your great-grandfather lynched, essentially be able to say, okay, this is how we should lead this coverage? And even if it is somebody who is not of color, who's the person in charge, they also then need to be on the other side of that, very open to having discussions with their reporters and their journalists and really listening to these opinions and how these stories should be told, because at the end of the day, the community will tell you exactly how they feel, because whatever they're not getting from TV, you and I both know. Look at Charlemagne's page, look at Sean King's page, look at Crump's page, look at, you know, Chris Stewart's page, look at the Cochran Firm's page. If you're not getting it from TV, our people will make it very clear, aka Black Twitter, how they feel.
Boy, will they? They have been very. Whew.
So how is that not a focus group? Meaning, if I was hired as a consultant for one of these local TV stations, Black Twitter would be one of the first things I'd be looking at, because I'd be saying, like, look, you're talking about 18 through 49,
right? Male
and female, millennials, generation X, Y, Z, all the way to your elders. People have opinions about how this is being covered. One of the biggest stories right now that won't go away is, why isn't Breonna Taylor's name still trending?
Yeah. That is,
on a local level, whose responsibility is it to make sure that that's still a story?
Right. Great point. I mean, you know,
it's a collective. I understand that it didn't happen here. I understand it's a national story. But if you and I were to go to Midtown right now, and we were just to literally just stop like 10 young Black girls and ask, hey, do you know who Miss Taylor is and what happened to her? I bet you they will all feel the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why it's funny. So what is, you know, the role of local media? I mean, it's still a strong presence in every town. And you talk about that, because you got me thinking now about the local media in Louisville, and I haven't had a chance to see how they're covering this story, because it's still a big story around the country. If you look, the WNBA, they have Breonna Taylor's name on their back. It's now you're gonna have me go check out local media in Louisville to see how they're covering this, because it's on our tongue in every city I know around the country. So what is the purpose of local media with stories like this, and how to handle the stories like
and this? I think this is the problem that I have had, and, you know, I mean, I can say it now. This is the problem that I've had with local news media is, and I say it like I'm still in it, I don't think that we do a very good job of the follow-up. Right. At least I've had producers who've had my back, who've always said to me, like, for example, with the Bridget story, it's like, I didn't do it once. I did it a dozen times.
Right.
And we did it a dozen times over the course of 2 years until her killer was caught. And there's still one other person out there. You know what I mean? Like, so with Breonna's story, I think it's like, I know it's hard to do, because in local news, what's new is new.
Right.
But we all know what happened on March 13th. We know that justice hasn't been served. And then it begs the question, could we be doing more? And if it's not a local news story at 5 o'clock, then maybe it's an investigative piece.
Right.
You know, maybe it's, give me the breakdown of what happened from beginning to end, even if we've heard the story again, because the people that are not tired of telling the story, the people who are up at night and continuously praying for justice, are her family members. And they are owed that. And when I think of myself as a journalist, which, and anybody will tell you, I always say I'm a journalist or an investigator, I don't call myself a reporter, is that my responsibility is not to be a pretty face or a talking head on TV. My responsibility is the families in which I'm covering. So when we talk about local news, not only is it what's happening there, what could we be doing across the country to ensure that her family feels like we've got their back?
Yeah, I know. I probably you family, so I can ask you this: the pressure, you said it, of the pretty face on the local news.
Yeah.
It seems like that's a big thing for journalists, and I won't say reporting, but journalists. What type of pressure is that for women to be that? Because I've seen some old men, and I'm like, he ain't that, but he's out there. But for the Black woman, or the woman in general, the pretty face, how much pressure is that to, you know, as a journalist in general?
I mean, look, for me, I think that there are a lot of people that decide to be on TV. That was never my calling. As you know, I was on my way to law school when I quit law school to become a journalist, and I specifically focus on crime. So there's nothing pretty about crime, right? I'm not on a red carpet. I'm not dressed up. You know, I'm not wearing anything revealing. Like, I'm at a murder scene, I'm at a rape scene. So for me personally, it's always been a little bit different. I've said this in the Voyage article that I know that you've read. I think that there's always been a lot of misperceptions. I think that there's always this idea that, oh, if she's young and she's pretty, that's why she got the job. I don't think anybody's ever looking at somebody's resume and wondering what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there is more pressure for women because in order for women to be taken more seriously, I think that they naturally have to work twice as hard. I think if you're a woman of color, you are walking into this game with 2 strikes against you automatically. That is for sure. And anybody who says the opposite, if a gentleman were to sit here and argue that with me, we can go toe to toe on that. How I'm viewed at a crime scene versus a man who, may be older, who's been in the game for a longer time are 2 different perceptions. A guy is going to be one of the guys. A girl's going to have a more difficult time having to prove her worth or her ability when it comes to telling her story, when doing it the right way. Do I think that there have been times where people can just kind of like look at you and make these kind of like rash opinions? I'm sure. Do I get caught up in that? Not so much. I think that as I got older in the business, particularly now, I'm very comfortable in what I bring to the table. And I think I've been that way even since we've been friends. Like, I don't really hold back the fact that I know that I can run circles around certain guys.
Shout out to Keith. He made a good point. I totally agree with him. Getting old for women in local news is unforgiving. And I've seen stations throw really good reporters away because of age, and I have too. And I've been like, whatever happened to her? Because I go back to what you said about the strikes, and I totally agree, because if you get on the air and if you don't look a certain way, the men out there be like, ooh, she looked like this. But if you go out there and you look a certain way, but you talk terribly or you tell a story terribly, then we like, oh, why is she on the air? So it is like that double sword that could be against you guys. And that's why I kind of look at it and I'd be like, we really need to embrace the people out there who doing this work, because they might be all made up, but they are in some stories that a lot of us won't sit in the middle of the street and do these stories. I text you like, did you lose me?
No. You're breaking up a little bit, but I can still hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's like a Verizon commercial. No, I mean, I think Keith is right. I think that as women age, they're looked at as kind of like this throwaway. As guys age, it's a completely different situation.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was saying Keith is right. I think as women age, they're kind of looked at as throwaways, and as men age, it's a completely different situation.
Mm-hmm.
Should it be that way? No.
Very much so. And it's just a double-edged sword. So let me ask this. Are you more creative now?
I definitely feel that I'm more creative now. Of course, COVID, as you know, I was in the middle of shooting a show when COVID kind of put a halt to it because of, quarantine. But yeah, and I'm excited to, whenever this new norm, whatever happens after this, and, COVID kind of settles and we start getting back to somewhat close to what we were, because I don't think we'll ever get back to exactly where we were. It'll be interesting to have people look at my work in a different way. It'll also be interesting to do things like behind the scenes, like the idea of producing and directing really, I don't know, it really excites me. So it'll be interesting. It's hard, right? Because there are people who, like you, who've asked me, like, are you going to come back to local news? There are always opportunities. Like I said, I never say never. It just really depends on the situation. It has to be the right situation.
Right.
It has to fit.
Right. If I'm always.
I feel like I'm at a point in my life
always
where
on.
if it doesn't fit, I don't know. So we'll see. You'll never know what's going to happen.
Because in
my life.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm sitting back waiting. I know something coming. You always cooking up something.
Because I feel like you have this idea of what you want for me. Let's just put it out there. What do you want from me?
Honestly, I can see you doing a national report. I want to see you do like a national investigative show called the Nef Files or something like that. I can see a Nefertiti Live, or you could do something. I think you have that personality to do that. I'm waiting for that national show. I'm just gonna be honest. I tell everybody that I can see Neff doing something national. You got a lot of big time friends. You know, you kind of mention them every now and then. You know, some guy
look,
named Charlemagne.
you know what it
You kind
is.
of
I
mention him.
think
So I'm looking for some big things.
Look, I think I was very shy. You know, when you grow up in this game and you're a female, especially if your friends are guys, like you got to be very careful. You know what I mean? Everybody I've mentioned is married, children. I know their wives, I know their kids. Like it's not like this big deal. I'm just saying, like, I think now, it's kind of funny because now, and I talk to them about it all the time. A lot of these people, as you know, I've been friends with for like 12, 13 years. So it's really nothing new. It's just, I think before I used to be very shy thinking that somebody was going to like think something or like assume, or maybe I was handed something or I didn't work. Cause again, you have that, you're a woman of color, you're young, you know, that kind of thing. Now I think I just don't care about what anybody thinks. So whether it's you, whether it's Keith, whether it's Shar, like for me, it's just very kind of like, these are my people. Either you accept it or you don't, and I'm okay with it. Where I think I was a little bit more shyer, like earlier in the game. Now I don't care.
What's the you've done a lot in your career. What's the proudest you've ever been of what you've been able to do?
Oh God, there have been so many moments. Uh, I will
And it don't have to be just one particular moment. It could be something about you that you've been able to accomplish in your career holistically, or something in particular, whatever it is that you've been able to say, I was able to do that and what I've been able to do.
I mean, I think I've answered this question with you before as far as like the stories that have made me the most proud, you know, that kind of thing. I think looking back now, especially during COVID and being a little bit more introspective, I think the thing that I have enjoyed the most is finding my purpose in my job, meaning my career has never and does not define me, but I've I've learned and I've become very comfortable with knowing that every family that I touched, that everyone that I spoke to, that everyone that I helped in the way that I did, at the level that I did, at the capacity that I did, even if it meant being sick, not sleeping, not eating, that I was exactly where I was meant to be, that God put me in that position to help them in that moment. And that's something that I'm really proud of.
Awesome. All right. So here's just the other side of that.
Mm-hmm.
What's the one thing that people say about you that you like is completely, utterly untrue? You get tired of hearing about you.
Uh, Am I allowed to say one thing or just a couple of things?
A couple of you say, because I know you'd be like, why do y'all keep saying that? No, I know it. What is it that just drives you crazy? Like, no, that's not true.
Things that people say about me that are not true is I have never had any facial surgery, no enhancements in my face. So that's not true. That is just a pure blessing of my mom and my dad. They get that credit. So I do not like it when people make these assumptions that I've paid for any of my features. That's false. I don't like the assumption that I was chosen for a particular job because of the way that I look, because I will be the first one to say that I speak 3 languages. I'm an Ivy League grad. I have 2 degrees. So to minimize me as just a pretty face is absolutely false when you don't know my story and you don't know the depth of who I am as a person. And then I can't contractually speak to certain things, but I would say whatever you read online is not true.
I'm sorry, Neff.
It's okay. I just stayed here, like just ready.
Yeah, I had to get closer to my Wi-Fi connection because my other one was from too far. But
It's
so
okay.
go back to that. I'm sorry. I need to hear that because
Meadows.
you've just said something. So they've said plastic surgery.
I said it in the Voyage article, and it's been said there were. I don't pay attention to what's written about me online now, because I think that's a joke. When I was younger, I think I cared more, especially starting in the business. But there have been a lot of comments about, you know, whether or not I get my lips injected, or if I've had surgery to look like Kim Kardashian. There's been a lot that has been said about my quote unquote exotic features. But that's neither here or there. I mean, to answer your question, I think it's comical at this point, but not true.
Wow. I don't know where to go after that, Neff. That's just that's interesting. That is comical. That is comical. Because I know you, and I know how you are and how things are. So it's comical to know.
And you know,
my Wi-Fi tripping. We got to do this again. Go ahead.
I should preface it by saying that I am not against. I should preface it by saying, because I don't want to upset anybody. I should preface it by saying that I'm not against women getting work done if that's something that they want to do. You know, because I have friends and family members who have had, whether it's, you know, Botox or breast implant, like, I'm not against it. I just think it's funny that people will take to blogs and like really attack my face just to answer your question, when in reality, it's not true. And if it was, I would just say it. I don't feel the need to, like, I think I'm at a point in my life where I don't feel the need to have to hide anything.
Okay, so wait a minute. What is this, like rivals or just radio? I mean, what is it? Who are these people? Are just people that just follow you and bloggers? Who are these people that say some of these things about you?
I don't know who they are, like, right? Because it's like Danny Lay says, like, I know F's given. Like, I don't know who they are. They're bloggers. They're on Twitter. They're on Instagram. I just know every time I go, like, you know, and I don't read it anymore, but like my brother he's my older brother. So of course he's always protecting me. He'll always say, oh, there's another blog out there making comments about your alleged lip injections. And I'm like, okay. You know what it is too is that I keep my private life, as you know, very private. So nobody has really, I mean, they've seen a throwback picture of my mother when I was a kid, but they've never seen pictures of my parents, you know, or my siblings really. So they wouldn't have anything to compare it to. So I can also understand, I'm not giving the haters any clout, but I can also understand how, if you've never seen anybody in my family, you wouldn't know where my features come from. But that's okay too.
So let me ask you that. So how can you, who's before COVID, with COVID now you can stay inside, but a person who likes outside and likes to visit places, how are you able to keep things private? Because you do. I have never seen or seen a picture of, oh, I saw Neff here, I see here, but you are a few places, but it's like you're very quiet with it. How do you be quietly active? That's the word. That's the phrase I want to call it. Quietly active.
That's a really good question, because I don't hide at home. I do go, like, prior to COVID, brunched with my girls, out dancing, and people always wondered, like, how come we know nothing about our life? Nobody knows anything about my life because I don't feed that. I mean, there are a couple of people who have been quoted, Maya Angelou being one of them, but you know, there's something to be said about keeping your private life private, meaning I don't need 10 chefs in my kitchen. Does that make any sense? Like, I'm just not one of these people that you'll never know.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time. I will eventually get married and have kids, and like the world will not know. And I'm okay with that. Like, if I'm fighting with my brother, nobody knows. Like, it's one of those things where I feel like when you are in the public, and I have these conversations with my guy and my girlfriends, when you are in the public, and I can name a couple of people, the spotlight is already on your life. People can be nice, people can be mean. I've had people say really some mean things about me, about the way that I look, the same way that I get compliments. And so when people don't know you and they are just very trigger happy, like, you know, their fingers on a keyboard, they can say whatever they want. And that's cool. If you want to attack me, you can attack me. I chose to be on TV. I chose to do this for a living. The people who did not choose this are my parents, my siblings, my best friends, my significant other. And so the idea of putting them out like that is just something I'm never going to do. Like, for me, protecting my family will always matter more than being the subject of a headline.
Okay, so last thing about you privately. So I gotta ask, because everybody want to see if they see you with somebody. You kind of mentioned it. Is she dating this person? Is she dating that person? How are you able to stay out of that limelight? Because everybody want to know who she with, who she hanging with, who she dating. Oh, I saw her with this person. She must be hanging out with him, or she must, you know.
Look,
I mean, that's a lot. You know, I'm sure that's a thing too. I mean,
I have been tied to girls, guys. Like, you can let Brittany tell you the story. Brittany thought, and there's nothing wrong, I'm, you know, whatever, but Brittany thought I was a lesbian when she met me, because she, as my best friend, she was like, yo, what's your deal?
right.
Which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, I like it that way. I think, have people tried to tie me with a whole bunch of people, celebrities, non-celebrities, male friends, female friends? Sure. And I just say they can keep tying me to them. I'm happy, and that's what I'll say on that. Like, I just don't, let them keep guessing. It's my life, and I'm happy within my life, and the people that are in my life make me very happy.
So, again, no more DMs to EGlaze. What's up with Neff? She keeps herself together. Yeah, I know some things. We're friends, but don't ask me nothing. That's Neff. Be bold. Act on your own. I'm not going.
Yeah. The thing is that
All right, Neff. So
nobody really asks.
I know.
Like, they ask everybody else, or they just DM to shoot their shots. I say this in every interview, and I'm gonna say it again. Do not DM me, because you cannot shoot your shot. Not only because I'm taken, but the reality of it is you can't shoot your shot. Like, I'm not a girl that you can slide into DMs. That's just not who I am. So hopefully that answers the question. Although every time I give an interview and say that, I still get DMs. So I'm not too sure. I just don't think people listen.
Hey, you know what Michael Jordan said? Wayne Gretzky only make 100% of the shots you don't take, or something like that, whatever it is. So everybody shoot the shot. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. And look, for the people who are out there still taking their shots, that's cool. It's just, I mean, you know me. I'm not even like acknowledging it. Like, they're just straight getting deleted. So I just feel bad for people who are taking their shots, because it's a waste of time.
Wow. Y'all hear it. Shoot your shots, but it's going to get shot back at you. So keep doing that.
It's just going to get deleted.
All right, Neff. Let them know
great.
What's going on in Neff life. Are you coming back? Are you out of hiatus? Are you gonna get back out there so we can see you do the interviews and the shows? What's going on? Tell people what's going on.
Yeah,
going forward.
Everybody needs some dope soul talk in their life. Everybody needs some no filter. Juice Man and I are working on Dope Soul Talk content right now. So if you're not following us, you should, at Dope Soul Talk. All one word. And then Brittany and I are also working on some promotional stuff and looking to see what we're going to be doing with #NoFilter. So yes, I will be coming out of hiatus. Probably not this week. I would be lying if I said this week, because I have to take care of some family stuff. But definitely in 2 weeks. Not this week, but next week, I'll be back from my hiatus. But thank you guys so much for noticing that I've been gone.
I mean, You was like hitting a show, so many shows, then you just like stop. So that's thing. Where else can they find you?
I did my comeback with you. That's fam. That's how you got to keep it in family.
I feel special. I feel special. Hey, one of our friends, we'll talk about it later, but you see one of our friends has put himself out there on Instagram recently. So I kind of texted him. One of our friends, a friend that we know, has.
You mean about like his new romance?
Yeah, I saw that. I was
so
like,
happy for him.
I was like, okay, all right, okay.
Yeah, he and I were we were talking earlier today. Well, I clearly when he did the post too, but then earlier today we were talking about it too. It's been a long time coming, and
right.
It's exactly, you and I know, it's exactly what I told him when it all happened. And I said it in the speech when we awarded him for Man of the Year at the Urban League conference, where I felt like, you were kept here because God wasn't done. And you heard me say it during Christmas, God wasn't done with what he needed you to do. And so it was really beautiful to see. And I think, Cameron clearly plays, well, I just kind of said it, but, his son kind of plays a huge role in that. So it's nice to see that he's at a place where he can give himself that way, especially, after 2 years.
Yeah, that was awesome. I had to text him immediately. So I'm happy for him. So I feel like you had a big part of that. So that's why I brought it up. So
that's stuff. So funny that you say that, because he said he said something similar to me. He was like, "Thank you so much for that was a very, in the beginning, that was a very hard time." And I think the way that I think about it is, if it were me or you, what would we need from our friends in that moment? It's one thing to literally lose, for the people who don't know, but to lose your partner, but then to also lose half of yourself.
Right.
And I want to believe that if, God forbid, something like that happened to me, that that you guys would all come and be there for me too, So I feel like when it comes to our friendship, and it's always been a very uniquely great friendship, is sometimes you just need people to remind you of your purpose and why you're here. And I was very happy to see that post, for sure.
Well, keep doing your thing.
You gotta admit, she's a dime too. So it's like, okay.
Man, hey, he can say what he wants to. He's pretty cocky too. He is a Kappa, if I'm not mistaken. So
he is a Kappa, so he's super
he's cocky too. So he's cocky too. I would expect it there. I'm happy for him. I talked to him and we talked about him a little bit. So I just happy for him. Hey, for my Wi-Fi go out again and embarrass me, I want to thank you as always. Thank you for giving me the first interview back after your hiatus. Nefertiti, everybody. Nef Jaquez.
And then
follow her on everything. She'll keep you out there.
All right, so we'll talk. Tell Keith.
Absolutely. I got to see this. Yep, Keith. Keith see it. He see it. He see it. All right. I'll talk with you.
All righty. I will. Okay, love you guys.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. I gotta buy a damn, what you call it, Gina? We can't do this. We can't do your show.